Today I want to show you how to make eggs Benedict using the traditional Hollandaise recipe that I learned to make in culinary school in France. So I'm a big fan of saving time and taking shortcuts wherever possible in the kitchen. But sometimes the traditional methods still give me the best results, and that has been my experience with Hollandaise sauce. Now I've tried making blender Hollandaise, and I've tried making Hollandaise in a sous-vide bath and a CO2 foamer, but I've still not found a way to make the sauce taste better than this. But before I jump into the recipe, I just want to give you a heads up. When we learned this recipe in culinary school, they told us no one gets it right the first time. And so I took that challenge and I was super careful. And on my first attempt, I made scrambled eggs. So I just tried again. And I made an okay sauce the second time and an even better one the third time. I don't know why we expect to get things right the first time. And I don't know why we are so hard on ourselves when we get it wrong. And that, to me, is part of the beauty of this recipe. To teach you that when you're learning a new technique, it's okay to mess up. I know professional chefs mess up all the time. That's how we get better. Now for this Hollandaise recipe, I'm gonna give you some tricks that lower the risk of cooking the egg, but also increase your cooking time. As you get better at it and you get a feeling for it, you can do it faster. So with all that in mind, let's jump to the kitchen. So let's take a look at the ingredients. For the Hollandaise sauce, you're gonna need 4 egg yolks. You can keep the egg whites in a jar for up to 4 days or in the freezer for up to 6 months. You'll also need a 250 gram pack of butter or about 2 sticks of butter. Finally, some cayenne pepper to give it a kick and some lemon juice, which makes the sauce lighter and so much tastier. If you don't have cayenne pepper, or if your cayenne is very old, you can also use tabasco sauce. Tabasco peppers are very similar to cayenne, and since it's liquid, you don't have the risk of clumping. You'll also need some eggs for poaching. I recommend calculating about 2 eggs per person. Now I ate 4 eggs Benedict while making this video, and I can confirm that is way too much. So much fat. Now those eggs will go in some bread, and I like to use brioche because it's soft, it's sweet, and it's very fluffy, but you can use any bread you like. Traditionally, eggs Benedict are made on English muffins, which have nothing to do with muffins, but they do have a great texture and flavor. And they have these little pockets of air, which are great for soaking up the sauce and the yolk. They are also round, which makes the dish look prettier. And traditionally, the English muffin is topped with Canadian bacon, which doesn't have much to do with bacon since it's made from lean pork, so it's actually closer to ham, which is what I usually use. But I also like to use crispy bacon, since it adds a nice contrast in texture and all the crispy, salty goodness that is bacon. So the first thing I'm gonna do is place the bacon on a baking sheet and set the oven to 165 degrees Celsius or 330 degrees Fahrenheit. Then put the bacon in the oven without waiting for it to preheat. Next, I wanna clarify the butter. So first I'm gonna melt it in a pan over low heat, and then I'm gonna remove all the milk solids on top, which are the white bits you can see here, and then carefully pour it into another pot. This separates the milk solids and some of the water. Don't throw these away though. These milk solids brown really nicely, so I will use it to toast the bread. Now set up a double boiler or a bain-marie and make sure the water is not touching the bowl. This is to make sure that not too much heat is transferred, overheating the eggs. Bring the water to a boil and then turn the heat to its lowest setting. Add your egg yolks, half a teaspoon of salt, and about 40 milliliters of water to your bowl. Then place the bowl on the pot and start whisking. Now this step will take between 3 to 10 minutes, depending on how quickly you heat the eggs. I recommend starting with a low simmer to be safe. If you start seeing little bits of cooked egg around the edges, this means you're heating the eggs too quickly. And you can remove the bowl from the heat while whisking to let it cool, and then touch the bottom of the bowl to make sure it's not too hot. Now here you can see the sauce is starting to thicken, and what I am looking for is enough thickness for the sauce to leave a trace. As you can see here, I am making a little figure 8, and you can clearly see the shape. So to me, that is perfect. Now that it's ready, it's time to make the emulsion. Now the key to making a stable emulsion is to start by adding a small amount of fat and incorporating it well. The emulsion is also less likely to split off the heat. And what I like to do is put a tea towel under the bowl to keep it from spinning. Now just slowly drizzle the butter in while whisking, making sure the butter is incorporated at the same rate as you are pouring it. Your main risk here is to add too much fat too fast, which will split the sauce. If that happens, you can sometimes save it by whisking in a teaspoon of warm water, assuming you added the fat slowly at the beginning. Now look at this texture. It is perfectly silky smooth. Now just season it with some salt, lemon juice, and cayenne pepper or tabasco, and keep it warm while you prep the rest of the dish. Now I know 2 different ways to keep the Hollandaise warm without cooking it or splitting it. The first is to keep it over a water bath under 55 degrees Celsius or 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Then make sure you cover it with some plastic foil that is touching the hollandaise to avoid a skin forming on top. The second method is just to preheat a thermos with hot water and then pouring your sauce in there. This should keep it warm for about 1 or 2 hours. Now I'll poach the eggs, toast the bread, and plate. Set a pan on medium heat and set up your egg poaching equipment. To poach eggs, I like to just use a pan, water, and a lid. I made a whole video on poaching eggs, and you can find the link on the description below. While the eggs are poaching, add some of the leftover butter to your preheated pan and toast your bread until golden brown on both sides. The eggs now look about ready, and I can keep them warm in a water bath at 60 degrees without overcooking them. Since all of the ingredients on this dish are warm but not hot, I recommend plating on a hot plate. So when I use ham, I also give it a few seconds on the pan to warm it up. Before plating, take one last look at the consistency of the hollandaise. If your sauce is too thick, you can always add a teaspoon of water. Personally, I prefer a sauce that is not too thin so that it coats the eggs nicely. Now it's time to plate. I'm gonna top the English muffins with some of that crispy bacon and place the poached egg on each half. Then top it with a tablespoon or 2 of hollandaise. If you have some chives, that'll make it look even prettier. Now as a bonus tip, if you want to give your hollandaise an amazing twist, try chipotle hollandaise. To do this, mix a tablespoon of the hollandaise with 2 to 3 teaspoons of chipotle puree and then strain the mixture directly onto the hollandaise. This gives it a smoky and spicy touch which goes beautifully with the eggs and bacon. My favorite way to eat chipotle eggs Benedict is with some toasted brioche, a slice of ham, 2 eggs, and a couple of tablespoons of the sauce, topped with some crispy bacon sprinkled on top. Eggs Benedict are hands down my favorite brunch. They are creamy, silky smooth, and just bursting with flavor. Learning how to make hollandaise is tricky, but I really think it's worth it. If you can make hollandaise, you can make béarnaise. It's not just about learning a recipe, it's about learning a technique that you can apply to many other dishes, like beurre blanc, or homemade mayonnaise, or salad dressing. And learning these techniques will help you become a better, more confident cook. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you on the next one. The first thing I thought of when I heard nobody gets hollandaise right the first time was that jump program scene from The Matrix. But my wife said nobody would get that reference. So if you get that reference, please let me know in the comments below. Okay, bye.